If you want to build a business that does multiple millions per year, this video is going to give you a simple framework to rethink the way that money is actually made. And it's not that other business creators have been wrong. It's just that most of them have only ever made money one way, and they come to YouTube teaching you something that they think is universal, that is actually nuanced to the only way that they've ever made money. My name is Rakidzich. I'm 39 years old, and I've made multiple millions of dollars in many industries, including the newspaper industry of all places. So I've done it where it's hard, and I've done it where it's easy, including places like Airbnb. My students have made over $1 billion in my business coaching, and I have the largest YouTube channel in my space, and you can see that in my description. But I want to earn your trust on this new channel dedicated to everything business. So today I'm going to give you the most dangerous and effective framework on the planet. Not only have I tested this multiple times, but it takes advantage of the modern weakness of the everyday human stuck on their phone and on the internet. To make solid and consistent money, you don't need to be the first to find a market. You don't need to be the best at a market. You don't need to be the hardest working or the quickest thinking or the smartest person in the room to make money. You just have to be an honest thinker and identify markets that have moved too far in the wrong direction. We're looking for incorrect markets. I'm going to give you multiple examples. Please like the video and let's get to making you some money. The center point of these examples, and possibly my entire platform on business, is that people are not self-aware. They overextend in the wrong directions because they feed themselves lies, because that's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. You have to fly in the face of everything everyone says and do something your own way. And any business that is founded on delusion usually dies in delusion. Live by the sword, die by the sword. And to identify incorrect markets allows us a couple opportunities. One, to get paid by companies that desperately need us to correct the market, or two, to silently punish competitors that don't know that they need to change. The newspaper industry. During the birth of the internet, they made multiple mistakes. First, those who understood the nature of content consumption and sharing information started to punish newspapers for the fact that they were legacy and they were print. Newspapers were too stubborn to make an online presence, thinking that they would just beat the internet fad to death by good quality journalism. Not only are they dwarfed in size, but the nature of how journalists make money has changed. Journalists very rarely can get a high-paying salary to do investigative journalism. Most content is paid by advertising dollars that are ranked on clicks. If an article doesn't get views, a journalist can't get paid. So pieces are no longer long, boring, thorough, thought-invoking pieces. They are now splashy and zesty and spicy pieces of content meant to get people to click and meant to get people to scroll through pages and pages of whatnot, so that way as many banner ads and side scroll ads and pop-up ads can get service to you. It's all about extending read time. It's not about quality journalism anymore. And that's just one tiny part of the puzzle, my friends. When newspapers painted themselves into a corner by not pivoting online, they started to run out of revenue, and they started to run out of options. My millions of dollars in the newspaper industry was building sales teams that would go around cities and sell people newspaper subscriptions and eventually sell people digital memberships for newspapers. I designed sales systems that talked younger audiences into buying an app on their phone where they had a monthly membership. You see those monthly memberships all over the place now with Apple News and all of your favorite news outlets. They try to gatekeep and put up a paywall and get you to buy into a membership. Membership culture has taken over everything. From information on your phone to the editing software that we use for this videos, from Adobe to CapCut, and audio banks and soundtracks like Epidemic Sound, everything is licensed on a monthly basis instead of a large upfront sum. This was another pivot that people made in order to increase the ease of adoption, because people need more trust to spend big money, and the internet gave everyone nearly infinite leverage but almost zero trust in product. So the natural economics were to lower the cost of getting into a product and 10x the number of people that you could sell to, and eventually people would pay the membership over time. The lifetime value of the customer could even be higher on small memberships that people forget to cancel. Companies that were insistent on large upfront costs started to lose market share. Not just editing softwares like Adobe, but music softwares like Ableton eventually had to cave in and start doing licensing fees to increase their lifetime customer value. When I was in music school, I paid a large chunk of money for a software. If I went back into that industry, I would pay a monthly membership for the very same software that I paid for 20 years ago. Fun tangent. I'm ADHD. Back to newspapers. They were incorrect, and they painted themselves into a corner and needed someone to sell subscriptions to help them generate cash. And they would pay me $100 per customer, even though we were collecting $20 per person on a monthly membership. Based on the lifetime value of the customer, we got a front-loaded commission. They relied on us and they needed us, and that was what gave me the ability to write these contracts to nationally sell for newspapers from San Diego to West Palm Beach to Chicago and New York. And this type of relationship exists to this day. So many companies overexert themselves in one direction and do not develop a sales team or do not invest into bookkeeping and accounting and do not have any innovation through product development, and they fall behind their competitors. They end up leaning on third-party mercenaries to cover the gaps at which they fail because they overextended in one direction. One of my favorite books, the most life-changing piece of paper I've ever read while I was homeless, was The Leadership Pipeline by Ram Charan. And they talk about as people climb the ladder of corporate America or any business structure, you go from being an entry-level employee like sales or accounting into management. And then you manage managers, and then you manage functions like the entire accounting department, but eventually you manage multiple departments, sales and accounting and logistics, supply chain, all of it. And when you're there, you learn that you've always thought like a hammer and you've always seen everything like a nail. Everyone who has a sales background tries to solve company-wide problems through sales. Someone with an accounting background tries to solve company-wide problems with accounting. And eventually, you realize that your solutions don't fit every single problem. And this is what these companies are going through. The eventual realization that there are many parts to a business, and they've been hammering one part, and they are completely imbalanced in the way that they're going to war. This is a version of an incorrect market. Companies that approach the market incorrectly. An example from the world of Airbnb, one of my students in Rockford, Illinois became the biggest Airbnb host in the area. He did so by getting 4-bedroom houses and putting arcades in every single house. And what happened is the people that saw his success wanted to do Airbnb in Rockford as well, so what did they do? They put arcades in their houses as well, inadvertently oversupplying the market with one type of product. Because if you know Airbnb, there's tree houses and castles and an Airbnb that looks like a shoe. You can watch Ryan Trahan's most recent videos, and he's going across the world looking at crazy Airbnbs, from shipping containers to farms to spaceships, all of the like. And to put dozens of properties in Rockford, Illinois, of all places, that are exactly the same property, is beating to death one type of product where everyone would love to see something a little different. So what I told my student as he picked up the next house is to go completely in a different direction, and to understand that the market is over-servicing groups of males because arcade games are inherently a male product. So why not make a full female-friendly place? Bubblegum pink or paisley wallpaper, or different designs that you can steal directly from Austin, Texas, or Nashville, Tennessee, where people are doing bachelorette parties and you can just rip a design and make it a beautiful space, but in Rockford instead. And this pivot to leaving behind the thing that made him the most money initially and abandoning ship and picking up a new type of product because all of his competitors pushed this one amenity way too far, he's now in a blue ocean region again in the space. He's the only property in Rockford really catering to females. Again, he gets to make all the money while everyone else approached the market incorrectly. I just recently did this with AI as well. There are real estate photography companies that are pushing AI-driven photo recreation of spaces. But these softwares tried to push into the Airbnb space, expecting real estate photography to be the same as Airbnb photography. But when you look at a Zillow listing to buy a house, you want to see a house, generally without furniture, usually, sometimes staged, but you want to see the kitchen counters clean, nothing on them. You want to see the bathroom clean, nothing in there. You want to be able to imagine your stuff in a home because you're going to buy it and move in. And that's why staging a home in photos is generally a bad idea. If someone doesn't like your furniture, they may not like the house because they don't like the furniture you picked, and then you don't get the home sale. But with Airbnb, people show up with luggage. So the nature of the photos need to change to seem more inviting, to seem easy. What we do is we stage the counters, we put pots and pans on the stove, we close the toilet seat and put a toilet paper roll and hang towels and add flowers. We artificially introduce things that hosts are missing in their home, and it buys them time to go buy that stuff, but we help hosts cover the learning curve of not understanding what's supposed to go in an Airbnb photo. And because all of these real estate AIs have locked in to delivering a type of product that is real estate focused, none of them can service the short-term rental space. So I created an AI to do just that. They were approaching one market incorrectly, and they left it wide open for somebody with a little bit more nuanced understanding. All of these examples tie into the one central thought, which is to think clearly and honestly about a market, to think outside of your ego, to check if maybe you've done something wrong, or if you're too invested in sales, or too invested in operations, or too invested in supply chain, to really understand where you might have a blind spot or an imbalance. And if you're not in an industry yet, stalk companies to find out if they have blind spots or imbalances. It reminds me of the movie World War Z, where the Israelis are all talking about how they try to have one person who knows absolutely nothing in the room because they'll ask the obvious questions, where all the experts have gone too far in one direction and they lose sight and they lose context of maybe some of the most basic rules that can help solve one of the world's problems. You may have an advantage being fresh to an industry where that industry has pushed way too far in one direction. And we can see strategic deviations all over the world. Like Planet Fitness, their commercials are making fun of meatheads because they realize that the everyday person is intimidated by the CrossFit chads, and they don't want the CrossFit chads at a gym that makes someone feel ashamed of themselves for being overweight. And they lower the rate so people would get that membership and never think to cancel it because they're going to hold on to it out of hope, but they're never going to cancel the membership because there's no reason not to go because the CrossFit chads aren't at Planet Fitness. Genius move. And one bonus thought for you is old industries can become new again with new technologies. The rules can change. The internet changed so many industries. Social media and TikTok changed so many industries. If we ever get super high-speed travel and people can go city to city in just 20 minutes at a time, that's going to change entire industries. Crypto replaces fiat currency. If we go Ready Player One and everybody stays at home and only socializes through a computer, if BlackRock buys every piece of real estate and all of a sudden no one can buy real estate anymore and we are a nation of renters, all of these will inherently change the rules, how other markets work. Every domino that falls has some effect somewhere else, and everything comes to balance. So for example, in the short-term rental world, if a bunch of hosts quit because they're unhappy, the people that are left make more money. And when people make more money, reputation comes back into the industry, and then people buy back in, and it goes in cycles. A lot of industries do this, and this is such a truth that you'll hear people say that the majority of the world's wealth is created in recessions, because this is a universal reset to the same way. People start businesses when it's easy, and then the economics change and margins compress and people start making less money, and then it's not worth the squeeze anymore. You started a business for 5 years, you were making 50% margins, and now you're making 10. You just want to move on because it was better yesterday. But the person without a business will start the business with 10% margins and be happy. It's their first business. And then later when it gets easier, they make the 50% margins. There's always a change of guard. When people feel like they take a step back in life, they give up because they don't want to be the one who took a step back and never recover. They're going to move on to a new project, a new challenge where they can kick the shame and have a fresh start. There will always be shift in industries. And that again is another version of looking at industries correctly. The person that got out because the margins were compressed, they looked at their industry incorrectly. They thought that they were never going to bounce back and there will never be 50% margins ever again. And just like in the stock market, people who sell at the bottom regret that they sold when it bounces back. Or people that buy at the top, they're eating crow when it pulls back. Don't move incorrectly by following everyone else and being at the end of a move like that. If you see 1,000 people saying that something's good online, you can guarantee that you will have 1,000 competitors if you start that opportunity. It's not that the industry is bad, but that way of making money is going to be oversaturated. If somebody's selling a course on wholesaling land, for example, you can guarantee that there will be hundreds of guys building the same lists and calling the same landowners that you would try to call. That highway has too many cars on it. So wait till people overextend in that direction and ask yourself, when this moves too far, what will be the next move? And position yourself a few dominoes down and catch people where they fall. This is how the foreclosure market works, for example. And I'll leave you with that. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. Any business that you already own, if you've got a crazy situation that you don't know how to get out of, let me know. I just might make you a video on how to solve your problem. Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end, and I will see you on the other side.